Okay, picture this. You're in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council. This is the biggest stage in the entire galaxy. A brand new species, the Luces, is just about to get their big break. Their representative steps up to the podium, ready to announce what she thinks is the greatest diplomatic win her people have ever had. It's supposed to be a moment of pure triumph. Or, well, that's what she thinks.
And this is her, Ganju Yemp. You can just feel the pride radiating from her as she speaks to dozens of alien counselors, each one representing a whole star-faring civilization. In her mind, this is it. This single, perfect presentation is about to lock in her species' place among the stars.
So, let's talk about this perfect first contact. You gotta understand, making a successful first contact is, well, it's incredibly rare. Most species trying to join the council mess it up somehow. But not the Lucidians. No, they followed every single complex protocol right to the letter. This was their masterpiece, their proof that they absolutely belonged here.
Their explorers picked up a faint radio signal, and they tracked it down to this little planet. And the species living there, they hadn't even figured out faster than light travel yet. You know, FTL. The Luces managed to make peaceful contact, which, believe me, in a galaxy where conquer first, ask questions later is pretty common, is a huge, huge deal.
Now, the Council has this tradition, and it's super generous. When you find a new species, you basically give them a galactic starter pack, everything they need to get up to speed. As you can see, the Lucinas did it all. They gave them FTL relays for travel, defensive weapons, sweet trade deals, and diplomatic partnerships. They were literally fast-tracking this new species into the modern galactic age.
So this is the big moment, the grand reveal. Ganju Yemp has just finished explaining how perfectly her species followed the rules. The council seems impressed, everyone's leaning in. All that's left is to introduce this new species. So, with a bit of a theatrical flourish, she activates a giant hologram and announces, "Please meet the humans." She bows her head, just waiting for that wave of thunderous applause that just doesn't come. And here's where things get weird. The council is not impressed. Instead of applause, there's just this stunned silence. And then you can hear a wave of groans ripple through the chamber. The triumphant mood just vanishes, and it's replaced by this feeling of collective, galaxy-wide exhaustion.
The very first thing Ganjul hears is a deep, tired sigh coming from the most powerful person in the room, Counselor Jukkid, the head of the council. He just mutters two words, "Not again." And in that moment, she knows something has gone terribly, terribly wrong.
And then the room just erupts. You hear voices from all over, shouting in frustration. They're not impressed, they're annoyed. Some sound angry, some sound like they're just completely done. You even hear one counselor asking for a stiff drink. This is the absolute polar opposite of the reaction Ganjul was expecting.
Just try to imagine being poor Ganjul right now. This is a complete nightmare. She's just standing there totally bewildered as it seems like her big announcement has triggered some kind of shared, painful memory for the entire galactic government. What on earth is going on?
All right, let's get to the explanation. Counselor Jukkid finally gets the room to quiet down. He looks at Ganjul, and you can see the pity in his eyes. He has to explain to her that the Luces haven't made some brilliant discovery. No, they've just become the latest victims of a legendary, galaxy-spanning con.
And here it is, the first big twist. The species that Ganjul just discovered is already in the room. In fact, if she looks over, she can see the human delegation sitting on a nearby balcony, trying and failing to keep from laughing out loud. The so-called pre-FTL species from that random sector, they're the very same humans who have been members of this council for ages. You see, this has all happened before, but on a much, much bigger scale. Ages ago, after humanity had its real first contact, they got the standard welcome package. But then they found a loophole, a big one. Their plan was as brilliant as it was insane. Set up dozens of fake, undiscovered colonies, wait for different species to discover them, and then just collect the welcome gifts over and over again. And the crazy part? It worked. They joined the council with the economic might of a species 10 times their age.
At this point, a human counselor actually interrupts, with a perfectly straight face, mind you. He clarifies that while there's no official record of this being a government plan, the human people, well, they have a name for it. It wasn't a heist, it wasn't a scheme. To them, it's known as the greatest joke of the galaxy.
So, Section 4, the law and the loophole. You're probably wondering, how in the world did they actually pull this off? Well, it all came down to a pretty clever mix of some really crude technology and some even clever lawyering.
So to get all their little phantom colonies out there without anyone noticing, the humans used this really primitive, really unstable kind of wormhole tech. The best analogy is right here. It was like opening an unlocked door by putting a grenade on the handle. It was messy, it was dangerous, but it got the job done. It let them pop up on distant worlds without leaving behind any of the usual FTL trails that would have given the whole game away.
And this is the heart of the whole con. The Council's law was based on common sense. Obviously, a species gets the welcome package one time. That was the whole spirit of the law. But the humans? They argued that the law never explicitly said a species couldn't have first contact more than once. They followed the letter of the law, not the spirit. And technically, they were right.
Of course, after the original joke was revealed, the council was furious. But they had no legal way to punish the humans, so they did the only thing they could. They changed the law. They literally had to add a clause that spelled out, a species can only receive these gifts once. They had to write down a rule for something they thought was just obvious common sense. Okay, so that brings us back to today, to this moment. The law was fixed, right? The loophole was closed. So why are the Luces here? Why did they just give a whole welcome package to yet another new human colony? How did this happen all over again?
And there it is. One last tiny little loophole. That amended law, it only applies to official council members. And since the Luces are still just an aspiring species, their first contact with the humans technically falls outside the council's rules. But Ganjul is still totally baffled. The amount of effort humanity put into this was huge, but the gain was tiny. So she asks them directly, why? Why go through all this trouble again?
And the human counselor just grins. He tells her that all those cycles ago, they pulled off the greatest joke in the galaxy. But it was missing one thing, a final, perfect punchline. This entire multi-year operation against the Luces, all the resources, all the time, all the deception, it was all just to deliver that one last punchline decades later.
So, what do we take away from all this? I think it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. What does it say about a species that would plan for years, move people across the stars, and manipulate an entire aspiring civilization? Not for money, not for power, but just for the sheer satisfaction of landing a really, really good joke. Whatever the answer is, I think the galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Never, ever underestimate humanity's commitment to the